Welcome, everyone. We'll let people on as they start to join in, but I'm Jessica Bueller. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Kendall at Lexington. I truly appreciate you tuning in for our Zoom event today. Kevin Cavanaugh in marketing is going to be your host, so I'll be giving that to him in a moment. Just a few things. We are recording, and this recording will be available to folks who ask for it and on our YouTube page. So if you don't want to be in this recording, you can turn off your video portion, and then just be sure your mic is muted, and we'll be keeping track of that as well. But again, thank you for joining, and Kevin, I'm going to have you take it over.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Kendall at Lexington Resident Speaker Panel Series via Zoom. I'm Kevin Cavanaugh, host of today's session called Why Did They Do It? In this Zoom event, we'll speak with 6 Kendall at Lexington residents who moved here and joined this community during 2021, right smack in the middle of a global pandemic. Why did they do it? As always, we'll leave time at the end for questions from our audience. You can also pose questions during today's session by typing them into the chat function near the bottom of your screen. Just type in your question. We'll get to them as we can. So let's start off with me telling you a little bit about our panelists. And I want to start with Christine and Michael Birch, who moved to Kendall at Lexington from Washington, D.C. just 1 year ago in January of 2021. Michael and Christine, thank you for joining our panel. So to the Birches, Michael and Christine, you lived in the same townhouse on Capitol Hill for over 50 years. Tell us why you chose to make the move to Kendall at Lexington in 2021.
Kevin, thank you very much. We chose it for several reasons. First of all, you talked about the pandemic, and that probably was a motivating reason in our making a decision, because we had a very busy life. We had our house and family in Washington, D.C. We also owned a house about 17 miles north of here. We loved to travel. We did all sorts of international travel, and then everything closed down, including getting to see grandchildren. So it gave us some time to reflect and think about what was next, recognizing we weren't getting any younger. And so we started a mostly virtual search and ended up at Kendall. And I'll turn it over to Michael to say a little more.
Yes, so I think we wanted to make the decision while we were still active. And we wanted to make the decision ourselves while we still could, and not have our 2 sons have to make a decision later down the road. And we wanted to be able to choose the place where we wanted to live the long term and not end up somewhere by chance. So Kendall was very appealing. We knew it because we knew this area, this beautiful area of Virginia. And that's what really caused us to make the decision, even during the pandemic.
Thank you. Now tell us a little bit about your cottage on Sycamore Lane. And before you do, for our folks who have tuned in and are listening, if you've never been on our campus, in addition to apartments, we have many freestanding houses and town-style type houses that we call cottages, but they're houses. Tell us about your cottage on Sycamore Lane and any renovations, updates, those sort of things that you may have had done before moving in.
Sure. Our house on 88 Sycamore Lane was one of several places, cottages that we looked at that were available. And what was very appealing was the location and the size of the cottage. Having downsized from 2 houses, we have 2,000 square feet here. So we have plenty of room. And even though we had to downsize from 2 houses and give children some pieces of furniture and on and on. And the location was very appealing. We have neighbors, very friendly neighbors close by. We look in the back on beautiful pasture land. We look to the south on a nature preserve. We have gardening space around the house, and I still love to garden, but I don't like to mow the lawn, and that's taken care of by the Kendall staff, and as is snow removal, which is also an asset. So that's, I think, pretty much. Chris, do you want to add anything about the house?
The only other thing I would add is, like, this cottage is, I believe, about 13 years old. We're the second residence in it. And so before we moved in, Kendall did a wonderful major renovation of the place. We have a wonderful new kitchen and a lot of other things. We decided to add a gas burning fireplace. So it really does have a very home-like feeling. You can probably see we're in our den right now. I don't know if you can see the couch behind us, but that's for grandchildren when they come. So basically, it is very comfortable. The other thing I would add is Michael and I have been married for 46 years. And one of the ways it works is to have our own space. And we do have our own space in this place.
All right, thank you very much. Birches, we will come back to you with more questions, but let's meet our next couple, Jim and Pam Adams, who moved to Kendall at Lexington in June of last year from Lexington. Jim and Pam, thank you for joining our panel.
Welcome. We're glad to be here.
Now, the two of you are practically newlyweds, having just married in 2014.
That's right.
Why did you choose to move to Kendall at Lexington when you did last year?
Well, I don't know. I think it was the timing of the several things. It was like COVID, the prices of the houses in Lexington, and I have been here 20 years, were going through the roof, got my attention. And Jim and I were staring at two surgeries that were on the books. And Jim had moved into my house, and it was a 3-story house, lots of brick steps on the outside. And it just flat landed on our lap that Kendall called and said, we have something you might like. And it was sort of like we were pushed over into a delightful situation.
Jim, anything you'd like to add?
Well, we knew it was coming. And again, I would echo the Birch's comment that we wanted to be able to make the decision for ourselves. Pam has children from with her late husband. I have children with my late wife. We thought it was probably unreasonable to expect that if anything happened to one of us, that the survivors or the decedent's children would be heavily involved in providing life care. And so the idea of being able to move from independent living to assisted living to skilled nursing was certainly a factor for us. And in fact, we determined it as a gift to our children because they don't have to worry about such things.
I have something I want to add, is that when I first heard about Kendall, they were just starting to build, and it was in the early, when was it, 2000?
Late 1990s.
And one of the residents that's notorious in the history of this place is Adelaide Simpson. And she came to us when we were just newlyweds here, and I was in my early 50s. And I said, Adelaide, it's too soon. She says, it will be here before you know it. And so I put my money down and started following Kendall.
Thank you both. One more question for you, but I just want to mention again for the folks who have tuned in who have not been on our campus before, we have a total of 150 independent living residences here at Kendall, Lexington. 95 of them are cottages, 55 of them are apartments. Jim and Pam, you selected an apartment. Would you tell us about the apartment that you picked, why you chose it, and the things that you did to make it your own before moving in?
In our case, and living here in Lexington, we were able to work over time and narrow down the choices that of units that we were particularly interested in. One was a freestanding house, one was a cluster cottage, And there were several within there, and one was an apartment. It was pure serendipity that Jessica called and said, we have one of the apartments that you're interested in coming available. What do you think? And the reality of it is that a lot of folks arrive here at an age when they are younger, and they like the idea of a house. But the reality is that over time, if we're also lucky, most couples or individuals end up moving into one of the apartments just for its proximity to all of the things that Kendall offers. We cut out that step. We decided that since we had the opportunity to have one of three of the largest apartments at Kendall, and we wanted to make this our last move, so we did. You got anything?
Pam, anything you'd like to add about the apartment?
Well, when we moved in here, I think a lot of people had already stopped by ahead of us. So they knew what our apartment looked like. Oh, you did this. Why did you tear out that? We tore out a lot of things and we made it just the way we wanted it to be.
All right, Adamsons, thank you very much for that information. We will come back to you with some more questions, but we have one more couple to meet, Jenna and Dennis Cropper. Now, they moved to Kendall at Lexington just 4 months ago in October of 2021 from Lexington. Jenna and Dennis, thank you for joining our panel. So let's rewind the clock a little bit. Jenna and Dennis, you moved to Lexington in 2003 for jobs, both retired about 7 years ago. Why did you choose 2021 as the year to move to Kendall at Lexington?
It's almost a repeat. Things just worked out that way. We had been on the wait list here for about 5 years. We have not looked extensively at other retirement or CCRC communities, but more recently, about somewhere last spring, we got onto what is called the ready wait list, where we say, this might be the kind of apartment or cottage or whatever we're interested in, thinking that till we described our needs and something came available, that would take another couple years. And that was what we thought our timeline was. Well, about 2 weeks after we had had that meeting with Katie, we got a call saying, there's a cottage that comes very close to what you are interested in. And that kind of kicked us into high gear of some serious thought about, do we want to do this? Do we want to do this now? And after a lot of soul searching, we decided that was the time. We considered the housing market, which actually in Lexington for us did not turn out to be to our advantage, but now the house is sold, so we're happy. But that was our thinking that kicked us into high gear, and we have never looked back and have no regrets.
After we moved here in 2003, we built a house in 2005, and we built that house to our specifications, and we knew it was going to be the house that was going to last forever. But then things sort of change after 15 years, and we realized that at some point or another, one of us may be alone, and we would like to be involved in a continuing care facility such as Kendall. I think the big surprise for us was how quickly it came about, but we were very grateful for that.
All right, now tell us a little bit about the cottage. You are on Sunrise Ridge Circle. That's the newest addition here at Kendall at Lexington. 30 new cottages were built, and folks, the very first move-in was in September of 2019. And we continued moving folks in through all of 2020 and into 2021 as well. So you're in one of those cottages. Tell us about it.
Well, the idea of having something relatively new was very enticing. And we will say that everything that we wanted was in this cottage, including 2 bedrooms, living room, dining room, a den. The only thing that we did not get is a 2-car garage, which is turning out okay because the 1-car garage is still filled with boxes and stuff that we have not unpacked after 4 months. But we downsized from about a 3,200 square foot house to 1,700 square feet. And it has just been a joy to do.
Let's not get carried away.
Tell us about what we have here.
As he said, he described the basic, what we have here, and it has worked out fine. It took for me some adjusting. The folks who had been here, and it was unanticipated that they would be freeing up this cottage. It worked to our advantage. We're very happy with it. So we did not do a lot of renovations. We had some repainting done and, some very minor tweaking, but, everything in this cottage was relatively new.
Mhm.
So it took me a little adjusting to get used to a different kitchen, but, after some angst, I'm making peace with that. And, we can all adjust to anything. It keeps our minds flowing. But we had looked at other places because we were local for 18 years or so and had been on the wait list for a while. We took advantage before COVID of tours that Kendall would have. So we were able to see apartments and cottages and, Sunrise Ridge, places on Sunrise Ridge, places over on Sycamore. And I think where we ended up would have ended up being our first choice. Had something come up and said, there's a place on Sycamore, we may have been over there, but it has all worked out very well for us.
Very good. Thank you, Dennis and Jenna. We'll get back to you, but now let's go back to Christine and Michael Birch for their answers to our next question, which is, what activities do you participate in on campus or in the greater Lexington and Rockbridge community?
So you've got.
Well, COVID again impacted on that tremendously. Certainly during the period when we moved in last January, you weren't going to get involved in anything outside or even inside the campus. But since we had a house about 17 miles north of here, I have been active for a number of years in the Stanton Music Festival on its board. Great classical music, not that far from here, that many people enjoy. So I've continued those activities. And also here on campus, I have joined a rather nerdy group, a public policy discussion group, which those of us who love public policy enjoy, and the rest of you can stay away from the meetings. But we meet once every 2 weeks and discuss. Right now, we're discussing criminal justice reform. We're going to have 5 sessions on that. And it keeps the brain going, which is very important. Michael?
Yes, so I have joined the horticulture committee with my interest in landscaping and the beautiful grounds that we have here. And one of the purposes of the horticulture committee is to recommend further development and landscaping of this beautiful campus. So including increasing the walking trails around the perimeter of the property, gatherings places for the community, fire pit type of operations and that sort of thing. I also plan, now that COVID is more under control, to volunteer in the local community. Close by to us is a nature center, Boxerwood, and they have an environmental program for school children, and I'm hoping to work there and help out with that. So I'd say, it's also, you sort of have to adapt to your own personality and tastes and likes. And I also find that gardening, just outside my house, I've met tons of the residents who wander up and down Sycamore Lane and stop by to chat when I'm out there working away in the heat of the summer or the cold of the winter.
All right, thank you both. Pam and Jim Adams, how about you? Tell us about what activities you participate in here on the Kendall campus or in the greater Lexington Rockbridge community?
Well, I had a rather unusual introduction to Kendall. If you live in this small town, everyone knows of Kendall. I can't say that everyone knows about Kendall. And I was interested, quite frankly, in the model of life care. For that reason, when I was asked to go on the board of directors of Kendall, I jumped at the opportunity. I'm in my 7th year now. I have chaired strategic planning and the finance committee, and I'm currently vice chair of the board. I say all of that in that it was a great education for me, and it gave me the opportunity to really get down into the weeds and discover that this is a very well-run business, and it is a business. Pam and I went and looked at other life care communities. We even put down some reservation fees at one of them, but we kept coming back to just how well run, how financially sound, and having an endowment, being able to look toward a certain future. And when we're spending the kind of money any of us would be expected to move in here, why wouldn't you want to know that we are in a very good position in the community and, quite frankly, in the industry?
Pam, how about you? What things do you enjoy being involved with?
I'm sort of slow in joining too fast. I am doing something though for myself, and I'm learning to swim. And I can dog paddle, but I never wanted to get my hair wet or my face wet or this or that, whatever. But I'm learning to swim from one of the residents who is an excellent swimmer, and she meets with me, and I'm putting my face in the water and learning to blow bubbles, and it's great fun. I'm seeing a lot of residents, a lot older than I am, much spry, so it's an incentive. I also am going to volunteer over at Borden, which is
The Skilled Nursing Center.
Skilled Nursing Center. Going to do that. And my back door is very close to the fitness center. So I'm a gardener too. People are always going to the fitness center and wanting to know how my tomatoes are growing. So I've got quite a little following.
All right, thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
Jenna and Dennis, how about you? What activities do you participate in here at Kendall or in the greater Lexington and Rockbridge community?
Well, I think the first thing people need to understand is that there are tremendous opportunities, both within Kendall and in the community, but you get involved as much or as little as you want. If you just want to come and hang out in your own cottage, that's fine too. There's no push. There's no, the way Kendall is set up, there's no activities director that's saying, come on, let's go play. Let's make, this Valentine or whatever. The activities are, a lot of them are driven by residents. And so there's a vast number of things that you can get involved in. Plus, of course, there's the fitness center. And it took us over at least the first 4 months till we finally got ourselves down to the fitness center. And we really enjoy that. So that's, a great opportunity. There's lots of places to walk. People are always walking on campus, whether they just stay on campus or whether they walk into town or there's trails around. I personally have joined the library committee merely because I have a lot of library background, and it's just something that I'm familiar with, am comfortable with. Whether I get more adventuresome in the future, we'll see. But, as we mentioned, that garage is still full of boxes. We've still got things to do. Dennis is on another committee and a subcommittee. So there's plenty of opportunities to be involved in whatever wide range of activities you might want to have.
Jenna had mentioned the fitness center, and about 2 years before we moved here, we got involved with country and Western dancing. lessons, which were held at the fitness center. So even before we were residents here, we were involved in the fitness center. Unfortunately, in March of 2020, we were on campus for a book club meeting, and we got an email saying we had to leave campus immediately because of COVID and they were closing down.
We did not live here yet.
We were not living here yet. So we then had to give up our dancing for about a year and a half. I think that we, in terms of activities, we're fortunate, we think, that we did not have to move into here right before COVID caused all the closures. Kendall, from everything we hear from the folks that were here, really handled that well. They were very, very concerned about the safety of staff and employees and residents. Locally, there are plenty of opportunities for folks to get involved if they want to. I know just within the past year, I have been appointed to 2 board of directors for 2 of the organizations, the Health Center and the Domestic Violence Center in Lexington, as well as Jen had mentioned, I am on the Facilities Committee, and it's just something that I choose to do. So if the opportunities are there, but you're not forced to take advantage of any of them.
All right, thank you. Thanks to all of you. Now we got one more question for all of our panelists, and I'm going to go first back to Christine and Michael Birch. Question is, what ideas can you share that would help others transition into community life in their first year? Folks who are on this call, who are watching, learning from those who have already moved here, what advice would you give them?
I would say, as a starter, don't hesitate to ask for help, both from the staff and your neighbors. We have found both staff and neighbors more than willing to help us with anything and everything. So and it helps you to meet people, to become familiar with the staff and their roles. So that for sure would be high on my list. And Christine, you would add?
I think Kendall is very good for different personalities, different types of people. I just say do it at your own pace. Whatever you're comfortable with fits in fine. I think Jenna mentioned something like that a little earlier.
Yes.
I think that's very important. But the other thing I'd say is if you do decide to go slow, there's other ways to find out what's going on. Kendall has a great website, the Katie website, that posts all the minutes from all the committee meetings. You can read those. You can also, the Residents Association meeting once a month, attending that, you really do learn what's going on, and it's very, very helpful. Yes. But I've seen people who've moved in since us, who've joined 8 committees, and other people who've done nothing, and I think both are happy. It really depends on the person.
Yes.
All right, thank you. How about the Adamses, Jim and Pam? What ideas can you share that might help others as they transition into community life in their first year here?
Well, I'm sure I could talk all afternoon. I come from people who live a long time. And I watched my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my mother do it wrong. I cannot tell you how hard it was to watch them grow old without the support that they needed in their daily life. And I think that was the biggest guiding in terms of when I recognized that I was getting the age of my mother and did not want to live with my single son. And I think the hardest thing when people ask me, why in the world did you go to Kendall? You're not this, you're not that, you're to this, you're to that. It's a very personal decision that has to be weighed against what you know about yourself, your limitations, what you want to accomplish in the years that you have yet left. And do not be deterred by any outside force that says, don't do that. You're to this, you're to that. Absolutely, you're in charge.
I would add to that there is not a month that goes by that we don't turn to each other and say, we made the right decision. And once you can say that, then everything else becomes quite easy. Yeah. Moving was terrible. Getting set up here in this apartment was terrible.
Well, no, not quite as bad.
But
it was all right.
But the reality is that we're here because we want to be here. And I think that's perhaps the most important thing. We made the right decision. And my last word would be for all of you listening and watching today, you know you want to live here.
No. You want to say that one again, Jim?
I know that we do. To all of our participants today, you know you want to live here.
All right, Jim and Pam, thank you. And now back to the croppers with the same question. Dennis and Jenna, what ideas can you share that might help others transition into community life in their first year?
I would have to echo a lot of what has been said. I think one of the first things is you do your research, you make your decision, and then you be patient with yourselves. And again, I agree, this was the hardest move, but I think that was physically, not emotionally. It was, you know, we are later in life than when we moved last, and less able to shove things around and hoist and climb, but it was certainly a gratifying move. But I also agree, ask advice, ask other people what they did. Folks are very happy to let you come into their cottage, apartment, whatever, and say, you know, this is what we did with this space. It doesn't mean you do the same thing. It just helps you generate some ideas of what might work in your situation. So there's a lot of advice out there. And again, you know, we made the decision together. We talked to other folks, but we kind of announced it to family. We didn't say, do you think we ought to do this? We just said, this is where we are. This is why we're doing it. And everybody was very supportive. They said, we just want you to do what is going to make you happy in the long run. And
I think the one thing that I would add to that is to go slowly also in some directions. I had mentioned earlier that we moved from a much larger home to a smaller unit. It involves downsizing. I would encourage people not to get rid of too many things too early. If you have the time and the space, like we did with our garage, bring what you think you might need, because there might be a place for it somewhere in the cottage. There are a couple of things that we have said ourselves that I wish we should have kept that one. We could have used it. So just take it slow at the same time that you're trying to make the decision.
All right. Well, thank you both, and thanks to all of our panelists. Now, those were the pre-scripted questions, but we purposely left time for questions from the audience. So now is the time. If you would like to ask a question, if you raise your hand.
Kevin, I've been monitoring the chat here. We do have some questions queued up. So I'll invite others to either type into the chat, or we're going to get through a few questions here first, and then Katie and Kevin and I will look for hands raised. Probably the best way is to type your question into chat. We have a first question here. Can anyone on the panel look extensively at other life care communities? And if you did, how did Kendall at Lexington compare?
This is Christine Birch. I can start on that. I wouldn't say we looked extensively, because we were looking during the pandemic, but we did look at a couple of places in the Washington, D.C. area where we come from, and where we still have very strong ties, and we still miss Washington, D.C., to be totally honest. We looked at them. Some had places available, some did not. Kendall really seemed to offer many of the things that we were looking for when we were looking, but we did look at others. And I must say, when you compare these places, it really is comparing apples and oranges in terms of finance structure, in terms of what's offered. You really have to go with your instinct about what fits for you.
Right.
Michael?
Yes. No, I completely agree. It was not an easy process, but you just take your time, and it's not apples and oranges, it's apples, oranges, pears, and peaches sometimes in trying to get your mind around the various structures, the financial structures and so on. But we took our time and mapped everything out, and then decided Kendall at Lexington was the best place for us.
Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about you said you had a deposit in another community and why Kendall stood out? You mentioned a bit about the financials being so solid, but tell us a little bit more.
Well, the two other places that we looked at were in larger cities, and they were larger campuses. We're talking about a resident population here of around 200, and many of the other two we looked at were larger. In one case, 600 residents in high-rise apartments primarily. That has its advantages, but I can tell you from someone who has lived in Lexington, and Pam has too, now almost 25 years. When we got here, Lexington was a little small for us at that age. We have found that we have finally grown old into Lexington, and it is a great town to get around in, to be able to get the grocery store, or the pharmacy, or the liquor store. And so it's nice to have the convenience of that without having to go out into a more urban environment.
Right.
Good question. There's another question here talking about how it seemed most people made a choice to move into their apartment or cottage when something came available. And are there a lot of choices that folks have? That's an interesting question, because when you come and tour Kendall at Lexington, we'll talk to you about joining the wait list. Joining that wait list doesn't mean that you have to pick the actual cottage that you want to move into on the actual date. You can tell us a range of options that you're interested in, like Jim and Pam had. I knew they liked the larger apartments, and they also liked cottages with a garage. And they did tell me about their time frame. So that's kind of how it works here, is that you let us know things that you are interested in, and then we'll keep you up to date when we think something falls into that category. For many, many years now, we've been maintaining, over 95% occupancy. So it's not often that we do have just a lot of things open that you can come in anytime and choose the one you want. So you really do have to kind of get on this list and have us keep you updated on what's going on. Right now, we do have a few apartments that our waitlist members have decided not to reserve. So if you were to come into Kendall now, you could have a few different apartments that you could then choose from. But oftentimes we're pretty much occupied. Pam, you want to add to that?
Well, or you could speak to the fact that my name was on the list a long time ago, and people would call to see if I was ready, but my name never went to the back of the or bottom of the list. At least that's what they kept telling me.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, if you're offered something and turn it down,
Right.
that does not make you start at the bottom again.
Correct. Yeah.
Didn't know if
And Katie on our marketing team just posted in the chat the link to join the wait list. You can also go on the website to join that online, or just give one of us a call to talk more about it. So I think this is a great question. Who wants to talk about first the food? How is our culinary program here? And then there's a second question to that from a nutrition standpoint. Are there organic options? I can speak a little bit more to that. But first, who'd like to talk about if you like the food here? Let's see.
I can I can start by saying there is a menu available. So you can get on, we've referred to Katie, so you can check out what is being offered for dinner that night. And then you can make that choice. If that's something that appeals to you or something that, you want to try, we walk down to dinner. But I still like to cook. And I know a lot of people are moving to a retirement community because they've had enough cooking. So we make choices, we aren't in the dining room every night, but we often are, maybe 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights a week. At the beginning, during that move-in process, that was way convenient. But so, and the food, it works just fine. But yeah, you don't have to, it's not a compulsory thing. You choose to do that.
The ice cream is excellent.
Jessica, let me just add a little bit to that. Kendall was very much challenged during the pandemic with loss of staff, and the kitchen is getting back up to speed and is doing a very good job. There were choices of 2 entrees. I think with a community of 200 people, you have the people like us who don't eat a lot of beef or pork, and the other people who don't think it's dinner if they don't have beef or pork. So it's a little hard to please everybody all of the time. We don't eat in the dining room that frequently. We bring dinner back home. We enjoy eating at home. We also are used to eating much later than Kendall serves, so we will have it at home. But they also offer a grill at lunch, which means if you don't want to eat the main meal, you can go there at lunchtime and pick up a grilled chicken sandwich or something very simple. So they're doing a good job. But I think Jen is right. Some nights you do, some nights you don't. And that's sort of nice too.
And I will add to that, in terms of variety, there is usually always, in addition to a meat dish, there's also fish, seafood, and then a vegetarian. So there is that variety. And luckily, both Christine and I like to cook. So if the menu on a particular day doesn't appeal to us, we will do our own cooking. Or if we just feel like hanging out at home, we'll do our own cooking.
Adams, would you like to add anything to that? Or, okay. And
Pam, I'll let you address.
I know your
this.
cook says we have a lot of cooks on the call here.
Yeah, I'm a foodie, and
I'm not.
I was allowed to design the kitchen in the 8 years that Pam and I have been married. I said, I want to do the cooking, and she said, have at it. So I do most of the cooking. I would say we average, and the meal plan calls for technically to get 1 meal a day for 30 days. But I'd say we probably eat something from the dining room
every day.
4 to 5 times a week, and we enjoy the food. We think it's quite good. The executive chef here is a CIA graduate, Culinary Institute of America. He is extraordinarily creative, and if you don't like the food, you'll love his sponge sugar sculptures and everything that he can do to make vegetables not look like vegetables.
Let's see. There's other question here about, are there cases when someone has reserved a cottage or apartment and then there's a delay in move-in? And that does happen. What we try to do, it's been a little trickier lately because of supply and labor shortages, but I think we've really done an excellent job of always staying on the same page. Like this happened in Jim and Pam's apartment. They were doing many customizations that involved many different supplies and folks doing the work. So I think we wound up pushing the closing, was it 6 weeks? Yeah. But we knew about, we were keeping our tabs on it. So we didn't wait to the last minute to say, you have to delay this whole 6 weeks. We kind of kept an eye on it, knowing that, it's looking that way. We're hoping, but it's looking that way. So build that around your schedule. When we have an apartment or cottage where there's not many changes, we don't really see much delay. It's going to take at least a month to go through our health and financial admission process, and some time to maybe repaint and things like that. But in that case, we don't see the delay. It's usually when there's some extensive customizations and we're just waiting on other contractors or certain supplies to arrive. I think, what was it, your double oven came in damaged, and those were sitting on a ship somewhere off California, I think. So we had to wait for that to come. But we just try to keep the line of communication open.
Yeah, but you helped us so much. You put us in one of the cottages.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that was all furnished. It was
Yeah.
lovely.
Well, it wasn't furnished, but
Well,
we brought some things.
We had a bed.
Couple of chairs and a bed, yeah. Yeah, we'll try to make sure
We were
you're not home.
delighted.
But yeah, so it can happen. We try to build enough time from closing to reservation that we think that won't happen. But all right, let's see. It's just some signing off. Any more questions? The Birches, if you can talk a little bit about, you're the folks that moved from out of town. Can you talk about changing your healthcare providers and how? What did you do there?
Sure. Well, since we did have a house, in this area north of Lexington, we occasionally did use Augusta Health up in Augusta County, which is about 33 miles north of here. And there's a slight disclaimer, even though Christine's brother and his partner are nurses at the Lexington Hospital, we tended not to use them. So we either use Augusta Health or for very specialized issues, we have used University of Virginia Hospital Medical Center in Charlottesville, which is a little over an hour away, and they're a top-rated hospital in the United States. So we've been very happy with the care that we've gotten at both of those institutions.
Anyone else, even local folks, want to add about healthcare? Anything else to add?
I would say, having been local, of course, we had local docs, but you end up going out of town anyway. And we have added relatively recently several docs from the UVA system, and that has worked out smoothly. Specialist folks, and sometimes they will have an office that is a little closer, say in Fishersville or Waynesboro or something. So
Okay.
we're all in the same boat at this age of finding new doctors. They have a tendency to retire, to be our age and retire.
Anyone else?
Can you live in assisted living when you got out of your cottage?
Yep, I did see that question. Yep. So the model is based on a contract where you would go from independent living through to assisted living, and then the board-in nursing center if you needed it. Then I have another really interesting question here for the Birches. Do you get back to DC? And I happen to know, yes, you do.
Yes, we do. Well, it's again like everything else with the pandemic, hopefully winding down a bit. We have gotten back to Washington recently, and we are really looking forward to getting back to some of the museums and more fun time with grandchildren. It's about a 3.5 hour drive from here right into the city. And if you time it right, you can do it without a lot of traffic.
Yes, and when we've gone up, we've used an Airbnb and been able to get together with family and some of our former neighbors. So it's doable. It's very doable.
Although I must say we're more tired than when we did it 20 years ago.
And I forgot, let's see, are there any nature photographers on the call? When I hear nature photography, I think of two residents, Lad and Ted here, which are amazing photographers who share their works with marketing a lot. So actually quite a few photos you might see in our website or our Facebook page are from them. I know there's quite a few birders at Kendall. Any on the call? Okay, but we do have many. They'll do the bird counts, and we have the bluebird houses across campus. Let's see, let's check any last any last questions in the chat, or we'll look for hands up and I can call on you. Okay, well, we have a little bit more time here. Kevin, you want to see if any of our panelists have anything else they want to add?
Sure. This would be a great opportunity, panelists, to, if there's anything that you think you wish somebody had told you this before you moved to Kendall, Lexington. Anything that you think folks ought to know in preparing for the move? I know downsizing is what a lot of people say is the hardest part.
I think one of the things, and it kind of relates to the recent question about birders and photographers, is that whatever someone's interest is, you can start a group here doing it. I mean, there are bridge groups, there are people who do genealogy together. There's a group that does ping pong. And I guess in response to your question, Kevin, I wish someone had told me that it could be that wide open.
Thank you for that. On the healthcare front, I would like to add a little bit to that, because I know that that is a concern for people who are moving or considering moving here from an outside area, especially from a city bigger than little Lexington, Virginia. They worry about, will I be able to find doctors? Is there adequate healthcare? My wife and I moved to Lexington after we both had careers in the radio industry, and we moved around the country a lot. We lived in many different places and were served by many different excellent healthcare systems, including the Mayo Clinic, one of, world-renowned Mayo. I have found that the physicians that we see here, we happen to see physicians from Augusta Healthcare. Before that, we saw one from Carillion, and but he went and retired on us, or we'd still be with that doctor. They're excellent. Both Carillion and Augusta have primary care physicians right here in Lexington, and specialty physicians who come here once a week, once a month, depending on the demand. And now Lewis Gale just opened up a clinic in Lexington as well. So they're excellent hospitals, and the local hospital, tiny little 25-bed hospital here in Lexington, has a full ER and a helicopter that flies both to Roanoke, to their big Carillion hospital there, as well as to Charlottesville, to the big UVA hospital. So the healthcare here is excellent. My mother-in-law last summer had a stroke, and she was at our house in Lexington. My wife called 911. There was an ambulance at her house in about 10 minutes. They got her to the local hospital 5 minutes after that, put her on the helicopter, and in, I think, less than 45 minutes after her stroke began, she was at a stroke unit in Roanoke being treated. And if you met her today, you would not guess that the woman had a stroke last summer. They did a marvelous job. So even though the city of Lexington is very small with a population of 7,700, I think because we have two universities here, we have very excellent healthcare. One thing that I want to mention before we close today, and that is a new portal for waitlist members, an online portal. If you are a member of our waitlist now, you've already gotten an invitation to log into this portal where you can access all kinds of information that previously was only available to residents, as well as all the forms and things for becoming a resident here. And things like what's on the dining menu this week. Things like the library catalog are all on this portal. So if you're currently a waitlist member and you haven't yet logged in, please do. I think you'll be very interested in the information that's available to you. And if you're not yet a waitlist member, well, by golly, I think you should join our waitlist. The cost is only $1,250. $1,000 of that is refundable if you later decide you're not going to move to Kendall, Lexington. You just send us an email and tell us that, and we issue you that $1,000 refund to get your money back. So
Kevin,
Yes.
I would just like to add that what makes this place so attractive is the staff. The residents are lovely people. We are all of a group, but the support we get from the staff is unparalleled in my opinion. On the other hand, on our board of 15 members, board of directors, 3 of the members are residents. We have a voice in what Kendall does. Kendall has a voice in what we do. And it's a great partnership and one that I realize is if not unique, certainly hard to find.
Thank you for that, Jim. Well, we are almost out of our hour. I think we might as well wrap it up here and conclude today's Zoom session from Kendall at Lexington. Thanks to all of you for attending and participating. And just a reminder that Kendall at Lexington is indeed open for tours and try-it visits to those who have been vaccinated, of course.